I know many of you will have used the expression wearing all the different hats, especially in leadership when we have lots of different roles. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about thinking about what hat you're wearing when you answer a question, and also thinking about what hat the person is wearing when they ask you a question. Before I get into that, if you are new here, I'm Thompson, and I help leaders to be more efficient, more effective, and build self-sufficient, confident, and resilient teams so that you can go home on time and take a big week off, zero work, zero stress, and zero guilt. And I do a video every week with different tools, different frameworks, different ways for you to approach your leadership in a different way to be more efficient and more effective, help you to be a better leader and one that goes home on time. So this week, talking about hats. Now, this is something that has come up a couple of times with different clients. And also in a recent workshop, we were talking about how as a leader, we want to approach our team with a more coaching approach so that we can help them to build their confidence, to build their competence, and also build their resilience around decision-making, around answering questions and working things through. So what I want to talk through today is thinking about what hat you are wearing when your team come to you with a question. Picture the scene. Someone comes to you with a question, and before you answer, there are two questions that matter. What hat are they wearing when they ask the question? And what hat are you wearing when you respond? A lot of leaders get stuck with just answering the question. So they're not using a coaching approach. They're just giving them the answer. They're telling them what decision to make. And leaders who are building those self-sufficient teams, leaders who are creating confident, resilient teams, use more of a coaching approach. And they will respond with a question rather than an answer. And those who are really great at this, think about what hat they are wearing and what hat the other person is wearing before they ask that question. There's a question behind the question. They come to you with a problem, or they come to you with a decision they want to make. And before you answer, you are thinking, what hat are they wearing? In what capacity are they asking this question? Are they asking personally? Are they asking for the role that they're in? Are they asking from the perspective of a project that they're working on? What's the purpose of the question, and what hat are they wearing? And how will they apply that answer once they get it? But also you are thinking about what hat you are wearing. What capacity are you answering the question? Especially if you are somebody who works in a role where you have different portfolios and you might need to think about questions to ask them in different ways. Beginning of every coaching session, and those that have worked with me will know, and if you've worked with any coach, you will know that at the beginning of a coaching session, we contract. We ask the individual what it is they want to focus on in that session, and we ask them what outcome they would ideally like to walk away with. That, as a coach, helps us to understand, do they want a solution? Do they want to just talk about it? Because sometimes that's all that is needed. Do they want a framework, something they can take away and use to help them with this challenge? And in the same way in leadership, when we take that coaching approach, we are contracting what it is they want from that conversation. Now, the chances are they're going to come to you because they want a quick answer, because it's quick and it's easy. When we ask them a question around the hats that they're wearing, or the purpose for the question, or what they want in response, we get a better understanding of what it is that they're struggling with. And I'll talk about that more in just a moment. This came up with a client in a coaching session, and we were talking about an individual that they have within their team. And this individual has been promoted, and they had previously been in a role where they had access to a lot of information. They had good eyes and ears over what was happening within the department. And now they had been promoted, they had less access to information. And they weren't used to that. They were asking a lot of questions that it was very hard for this leader to tell whether or not they needed to know the answer, and also how to potentially filter that answer to make sure the answer was appropriate for the role that they are now in, not the role that they had been in before. So this was where the hat conversation came in, because I asked the question, what hat is it they're wearing? Are they asking this question with the old hat from the role that they were in before? Or are they asking from the perspective of the role that they are in now? And asking them that question helps that leader to then understand the purpose of the question and also to be able to contract where this conversation goes and how that leader is best placed to support them. So we need to check in with this because otherwise, potentially, we're asking the question that may not need to be answered. We might be giving out information that isn't relevant or appropriate. And we want to make sure that we are joining their conversation as they need us to join it and they get the outcome that they are looking for. And if it's not the outcome that they're looking for, that we explain why that is the case. So before we jump in and give them the answer, we want to check what the purpose of the question is and what they want from this conversation. That then helps us as the leader to decide, do we come into this? How can we best support this? And I'm sure that this happens across lots of different companies. You have somebody who is naturally curious. They have lots of questions. They want to know what's going on. And as a leader, we don't want to shut that down. We don't want to take that away from them. But we do want to make sure that when we answer that and when we engage in those conversations, that we give information that is relevant and appropriate. So asking those questions to establish what their intention is, what their purpose is, and what the outcome is that they're looking for helps us to step into that conversation in a way that has the best possible outcome, not just for that individual, but for everybody who are concerned. Now, in a similar way, we want to make sure that we are answering with the right hat. And this will apply to those of you who have leadership positions where you have more than one responsibility or more than one portfolio. So it might be that within your portfolio, you are a subject matter expert, but you might also be the decision maker. You might be the health and safety lead, but you might also be the HR lead. So sometimes in our roles, dependent on the size of the organization that you work for, you'll have different portfolios and therefore different hats. When we are in conversations, again, when people come and ask us questions or they're asking us for that decision or they're asking for that support or guidance, we need to make sure that we are answering with the right hat or the best hat on. Are we answering as a problem solver and a subject matter expert? Are we answering as the decision maker? Are we answering as their manager or answering as their peer? What hat are we putting on to answer that question? So, as I said, this has come up with different people who have lots of different portfolios. And actually, sometimes it can be really helpful just to say, okay, what hat do you want me to put on to answer this? Because the answer as an HR rep is going to be very different to the answer you might give as, let's say, mental health first aider. It might be that you give a different response as a subject matter expert to the one you might give as the decision maker or the lead. Sometimes both answers will be the same, but if we don't check what hat we need to put on or in what capacity they are asking that question, we can potentially give an answer that isn't as helpful as it could be. We also want to check whether or not they are asking us as the leader because it needs our authority and we have to make that decision, or whether or not we can step into that coaching role and ask them the questions and guide them through making that decision for themselves. The more questions that we ask in response to the question can help us to shape the best possible answer. Now, once we've worked out the hats, we want to make sure that we are working out what it is that they actually need so that we can help them in the best possible way. In the workshop last week, I was sharing my KSA bridge framework. So something I have talked about in videos before, but there's an opportunity here for me to talk through it again in this context. We want to make sure that we are supporting our teams with what they actually need rather than what they want. Most of the time when they come to us, they're going to want a quick answer. They're going to want a quick decision, and then they can go off and implement what advice we have given or what decision we have made. That isn't what builds a confident, competent, and resilient team of individuals. So when we are able to identify what it is that they need rather than what it is that they want, we are able then to adapt our approach to give the best possible response. So we don't just support them in that moment, we support them with that longer term future growth. So let me talk through the KSA Bridge framework. There is a difference between where your individuals are on the team and where you want them to be. And in that gap, there is a bridge. And when we can understand what is in that gap, then we can understand what is the best bridge to get them from where they are now to where it is that we want them to get to. It will normally fall under one of three categories. It will either be a knowledge gap, a skills gap, or an action gap. If it's a knowledge gap, they don't know. If it's a skills gap, they can't do. And if it's an action gap, they can do, but they're not doing, or they're not doing consistently. If it's a knowledge gap, they don't know what they need to know. Now, when this happens, we want to wear our mentor hat or our trainer hat. We want to be able to give them the information that they need. We want to share information, signpost resources, and help them to fill in that gap. This is when giving the answer is helpful. If it is a skills gap, they know what to do, but they need to develop that capability. We want to wear the coach or developer hat here. We want to ask them questions or create a safe space for them to be able to practice the skill. So when we talk about delegation is supporting them to practice that skill with our support, with our guidance. We are guiding them through the process. We are most definitely not doing it for them, but we are supporting them to develop that skill. And we can do that proactively as well. We know that that gap is there. We know there's a skills gap there. We as their leader can identify different scenarios, different examples where we can support and guide them to develop that skill. If it is an action gap, they know what to do. They can do it, but they're not doing it consistently. So this is where we might wear an accountability hat and also a coaching hat. We can ask them questions. What's stopping them? What's holding them back? What do they need to do differently? We can ask them questions around mindset and confidence and what they believe to be true. Anything that helps them to identify what is getting in the way of them taking consistent action. We're wearing a coaching hat and we are supporting them to hold themselves accountable. We are helping them to explore what the barriers are. We are not giving them the solution. So still in that coaching approach, we're asking them questions. We are helping them to explore and we are helping them to see things from a different perspective. We're not telling them, but we are guiding them with questions to help them to identify what the challenge is and what the potential solutions are. When we wear the wrong hat, we potentially don't help them in the way that we think we are helping them. When there is a knowledge gap, but we wear the coaching hat, we are just adding to the frustration. Or if the frustration isn't there, we're creating frustration. They don't know, and we are asking them questions. And I think many of us will have been in a scenario where we've gone to a manager, we've gone to our leader to ask a question because we don't know. And they use the very standard coaching questions. Oh, what do you think? It's like, I don't know what to think because I don't know. I don't have the information I need to think. So we don't want to pair the knowledge gap with the coaching hat. When there is a skills gap and we put on the expert hat, this is where we're creating dependency because we're doing it for them. We're not giving them the opportunity to learn and to grow. And when there's an action gap and we put on a mentor hat, we're just giving them more information that they don't need. We are already telling them what they already know instead of coaching and guiding them to take action and consistent action. The wrong hat equals the wrong help. We want to make sure we identify the hat and then we can identify the best possible approach to be able to support them. Remember, we become more efficient and more effective, and then we help our teams to become more confident and more self-sufficient. Helps to clarify what is actually needed before you answer. Don't assume what it is that they want. This also helps them to increase their awareness of their intentions and their purpose behind the question. Before you answer, ask yourself what hat you need to wear to answer this so that you're not just supporting them in the moment, you are supporting them in the future as well. Do they need you to be a coach, a mentor, or an expert? And think about whether that hat builds their capability, not just short term, but the long term too. We talked about this in the workshop. We had some really interesting discussions and people were sharing their thoughts in the chat. We want to coach. We definitely don't want to rescue. Whilst it doesn't feel like rescuing, when we jump in with the answer, when we make the decision for them, that is essentially what we are doing. And it's not the kindness that we think it is because, like I said, it helps them in the moment. It doesn't help them longer term, which means they'll keep coming back with those questions and you're training them to be dependent on you. If you coach them through the answer, they learn to make decisions. They learn what questions to ask to work through a scenario like this. So if you're not available, they're learning what questions to go and ask somebody else. They're also learning what questions to ask themselves to work through that process. And so what you're also teaching them is how to problem solve. They learn to ask different questions and they get better answers without necessarily having to come to you. How you respond trains how they ask in the future. So if you want fewer questions, your questions need to coach them through. Help them to explore things from a different perspective. Help them to find the answers for themselves. That is how you build the capability. That's how you increase the competency. And it's also how you increase their confidence and resilience as well, instead of that dependency. Now, for most leaders, you are not just in one role. You'll be the manager, you'll be the subject matter expert, you'll be a coach, a peer, the strategic thinker, the doer. And sometimes all of that happens in one conversation. I speak to a lot of clients who do have multiple portfolios, and you will have different hats to wear at different times. And so how you respond needs to be considered. The most efficient and effective leaders, they take that pause before they give an answer. And they'll answer with a question before they answer. And that then means that they are answering in the most effective way, not just for the individual that is asking the question, but also for themselves and the longer term as well. Your role is to support and to guide and to bridge those gaps, whether it's knowledge, skills, or action gaps. That's how you create the most self-sufficient team. That's what helps you to be more efficient and more effective because you now have time available to go and work on the things that are most important in the role that you are in. If you're always wearing the expert hat, people will always come to you as the expert. If you can match the hat to what they need, not what feels either most comfortable to you or what they tell you that they want in the moment, then we'll build that competency and that capability. So you're checking two elements to the question. Firstly, you're identifying who's wearing what hats, and then you are identifying what do you need to bridge the gap. Is it knowledge? Is it skills? Is it action? I definitely experienced this when I went from team leader to senior leader. And I went from a role where I knew all of the answers. I had all of that information. I'd worked in that area of the business for a very long time. And I was used to people coming to me. In fact, as I've shared before, I had a lot of pride in the fact that people came to me because I had the knowledge, because I had the skills and I had the experience. And I loved that. I loved the fact that I was able to help people by giving them the answers. But then it gets to a certain point where you find that the same people are asking the same questions, or the same people are getting very reliant on coming up to you and running everything by you. So they don't need you to make the decision because it needs to be somebody with that authority. They're coming to you because they've got used to coming to you, and you end up being a comfort blanket. And what it starts off as being something that you're very proud about, starts to become something that is the frustration. And that changed when I went into the senior leadership role in a department and an area of the business I had never worked in. So if somebody came to me with a knowledge or skills gap, I was not the one that was able to help them. However, I could put on that coaching hat and ask them questions or signpost them to somebody who would be able to give them that information to fill the knowledge gap or support them with the skills gap. If it was an action gap, I could put the coaching hat on and I could support them to work that through. I had to let go of having all the knowledge and the skills and work on how I could still support them by putting a different hat on to be able to not just help them in the moment, but be able to help them longer term as well. They needed me to listen, to ask questions so that they could make the decisions with the knowledge that they had, with the skills that they had, and based on their experience and expertise. Different hat completely different way of supporting people, but still supporting people. We want to make sure we've got the right hat. We want to make sure that we're helping our teams get what they actually need so that we're building capability, not dependency. We want them to learn to ask better questions. We want our team to be self-sufficient, and not just self-sufficient, confidently self-sufficient. The more we ask these questions, the more they understand which hat they're wearing. So when they come to us with a question or a problem, they know what hat they're wearing. They're thinking about what we're going to ask them before we ask them. So they're prepared for those conversations. And they'll develop those questions that sometimes in working that out, they work it out and don't need us at all, which is a bonus, because then they're getting more confident in their own confidence, in their knowledge, in their skills, and in their ability to be able to take action. This helps them to shift their identity as well. They start to see themselves as somebody who can answer the questions, who is able to work things out, make a decision, and take action on it. They don't need to go and see their team leader, their boss, every time something happens. You're building confidence, capability, all of the things that you as a leader want your team to be. So think about the hats, think about the KSA bridge, diagnose what it is that they actually need so that you can choose the right leadership approach to be able to respond. It's all about that clarity, and that clarity will be the difference between reactive leadership that happens by default and the intentional leadership that happens by design. That is the shift. That's what we're working on. That's what helps you to become more efficient and more effective. It's what helps your team to become more confident, more capable, and more self-sufficient. I would love to know what's resonated with you. I would love to know your light bulb moment, and I would love to know what you are now going to take into action. Knowledge, skills, action. As a result of watching this video, what do you now know? What skill do you want to put into place? And how will you take action? What small action are you going to take? How are you going to apply this into your day-to-day work? Keep it small, keep it simple, keep it specific. I would love for you to share what action you are taking. It's always really interesting to hear what people do as a result of watching these videos and the impact that it has. So if you are taking action and you are noticing that things are changing, I would love to hear them. All of these videos are recorded with the intention of helping you to become less reactive and therefore less overwhelmed and more intentional, more efficient and more effective in the process. There are a number of these videos now, so if you have found today's video interesting, have a look at the other videos. They are all pinned together on the playlist. There are other free training and resources also. Head to the website, there's a resources section. You will also find there or here on YouTube the podcast links as well. So a new podcast coming out every week. And if you want more, there is the leadership community. Doors are open. You're very welcome to join us. We have a monthly workshop and a monthly group coaching call. And then later on in the year, we will be running the next cohort of the Elevate Your Efficiency Blueprint program. And there is always one-to-one as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anyone who you feel this would be useful to. And I'll be back again with another video next week.